You're welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. Don't forget you can tweet at me at BizMorning as you share your thoughts and also send in some of the questions you may want us to ask our guests on the show. We've been talking about revenue generation in Nigeria, and our guest has been Bayo Drudola, an economic analyst with BGL Asset Management in Lagos here. And from Abuja, we've been talking to Gbenga Odeyemi, who is a Chief Operating Officer at Atikov Services Limited. Thank you, gentlemen, for still being a part of the show. I'm going to start with Bayo. Before we went on break, we were talking about how much the money has been spent, what ways it's been expended. Do you think that we should begin to scale down? I know there have been efforts by the Minister of Finance to scale down the current expenditure. Would that help? In line with the medium-term expenditure framework that has been submitted to the National Assembly by the President, do you think that scaling down recurrent expenditure would help us save in line with what we're doing for the excess crude account?
Yeah, the truth is, in the immediate and the short-term measure that is graspable for us is really to begin to look at our expenditure really, and it's really something that I think should be easy for governments to deal with, because number one, if you come from the perspective of plans that are on ground in relation to even taking care of MDAs that represent excess capacities or that duplication in roles, such that we either merge them or phase some of them out. This is an area where we have done very little on, and that's something. And again, considering the fact that we have spent an estimated close to $1 trillion again in subsidy this year, that translates to the fact that we perhaps imported around 3 to 4 trillion worth of naira worth of petroleum into the country this year. This is also another area where, if we build capacity locally to deal with this, it's all about supporting the private sector to drive, refining product locally, and then we can begin to do something from the supply side to reduce how much comes out of government pocket into that area. We could perhaps be saving around 500 to another $1 trillion in subsidy payment. That's another area. So there are a couple of areas, and I think these are measures that, if you consider critically, in addition to reducing even the size of government, and we could achieve in 2-3 months with committed, push on this front, and that could save us some money that could, at least one, begin to serve as a buffer in a way, and at the same time reduce the pressure on government primary balance, which means that no matter what it is, your break-even as a government in the year could reduce substantially from looking at something like 77 or 78 $70 per barrel of oil, price as barrel of oil, to something very low.
Let's listen to Gbenga. The IMF, World Bank, had advised Nigeria to increase its savings. Now, that's the excess crude accounts. That figure is about $4 billion. We've been asked to raise the figure to $6 billion. That was one of the decisions reached at the World Bank meeting a few weeks ago. But I just want to ask you this question that has been tweeted by one of our viewers. He wants to know that if the $7 to $8 per barrel benchmark for the 2015 budget is realistic, how realistic is the production per day in terms of our output? Do you think we can meet up with the demand out there?
Yeah, I think I should respond to that by saying that it all depends on the stability of that region. And so far, that particular region has been very stable. So meeting the production budget should not be a challenge, because I remember that maybe some years ago, the major challenge was the challenge of militancy and all the stuff that actually affected production. But for over a time, we've been seeing growth in production. And except for the other challenge of theft, oil theft, and the challenge of some force majeure, some issues that just came up with Shell some times ago and all this stuff. I believe that we could actually meet that demand. We could actually meet that target.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with you. There has been the reports that the government plans to quiz some firms over tax remittance. In fact, that for failing to remit tax revenue amounting to 2.4 billion naira, the Federal Inland Revenue Service has quizzed top officials of 6 companies operating in Lagos. Now, if this is happening at this point where some companies will not remit the taxes to the government, of course, that would not help us to generate revenues.
But I didn't get the question.
The FIRS, that's the Federal Inland Revenue Service, is quizzing some officials of some companies over the non-remittance of about 2.4 billion naira in taxes. Now, this is happening at a time when we are looking for money, where the government says we need to increase our revenue generation base. What can the government do to block these loopholes that we are recording?
I think I should respond to that by saying that the enforcement should be the I mean, how do I put it? I think government should focus more on enforcement. And what I mean by that is that if you have assessed a company to tax to say that okay, 2.4 is due to the government and such is not being remitted, I think the government should take the full law the full law to apply the full law on such defaulters to ensure that that will deter others from doing the same thing. And what I've also realized in this with the issue of tax is that FIRS is only focusing on those companies that have, that they know, but they are not making effort to get to know those other potential taxpayers in the economy. Especially when there are businesses that do not work for government, where they have nothing to use to track them.
Your final words, so we're going to wrap up the show quickly. What's the way forward?
I think one of the first things that...
I think one of the first things that the government needs to do is to make sure that all businesses are properly registered. I know FIRS is trying in the aspect of allocating tax identification numbers to businesses, and I also know that they are trying to work with Corporate Affairs Commission so that every company that is registered in Nigeria they have a portal where they can actually view them. I think more things that they have to do is to ensure that all these companies are being followed up, because it's one thing to have corporate affairs, to have business registered. It's another thing to have the business in existence.
Thank you, Gbenga. Let me come to Bayo, your final words. Gbenga was trying to say that we shouldn't just focus on the non-oil sector, but every company operating in Nigeria, if you're registered with the CAC, you should be filing in your returns. What's your own take?
Those are the capacities we talk about in relation to giving targets. You don't give targets to people without being sure that they have the capacity to meet that target. So basically, it means that you have to provide the infrastructure to ensure they can track and make sure that both customs and FIRS could deliver on the mandate and at least meet the target you set for them. Again, perhaps the good thing for us is that we've seen some upturn in oil price. How sustainable that is will be good. Saudi Arabia is perhaps cutting back, and the good news that manufacturing capacity is improving in China could also help support a bit of a rally. And
all right.
Our here and there, give or take, we're perhaps going to still be within our budgets.
All right, thank you, Bayo. That's all we can take from you. We were speaking to Bayo Durudala, an economic analyst from BGL Assets Management Limited, and from Abuja, we were speaking to Gbenga Odeyemi, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Article Services Limited. And we've been talking about revenue generation in Nigeria. What is the way forward? What options do we have to be able to protect our economy from external shocks on the back of falling oil prices in the international market. And that's it here on Business Morning. Thank you so much for watching. We do appreciate your time with us on the show. I am Bolaji Akinwale.